Welcome to our YouTube channel, The Alien Tales, and please ensure that you have subscribed.
Her final message reaches me 20 years after she died. It changes everything. Light travels slowly between galaxies. Her last transmission just arrived. The war, the betrayal, the reason she couldn't come home. All lies. Commander Thane Blackwood stood in his apartment's observation deck, watching Earth's twin moons dance across the star-scattered sky. 20 years had passed since the Andromeda War ended. 20 years since he'd lost everything that mattered. The grief had crystallized into routine: wake, work, sleep, repeat. His neural implant chimed softly, indicating an incoming transmission from the Deep Space Communications Array. Priority 1 message, Commander, the automated voice announced. Origin, Andromeda Galaxy, Sector 7. Signal degradation minimal despite 20-year transit time. Thane's blood froze. Sector 7. That was where Captain Elara Voss had died, where his wife had supposedly betrayed humanity's greatest secret to the Zentorian Empire before taking her own life rather than face capture. The official reports painted her as a traitor, though Thane had never believed them. Not completely. Display sender identification, he commanded, his voice barely steady. The holographic interface materialized, showing transmission data that made his knees buckle. Source signature matched Captain E. Voss, 42nd Reconnaissance Squadron. Timestamp, 20 years ago, 3 days before her reported death. Impossible, he whispered, but his hands were already trembling as he reached for the activation controls. The woman he'd mourned, whose memory he'd defended against whispers and accusations, had somehow sent him a message from beyond the grave. The first few seconds contained only static, then her voice emerged, achingly familiar despite the distortion of intergalactic transmission. Thane, if you're receiving this, then everything you've been told is a lie. Elara's image flickered into view, her auburn hair disheveled, uniform torn and bloodied. She was inside what appeared to be a damaged spacecraft, warning lights casting ominous shadows across her face. Despite the chaos around her, her green eyes held that familiar determination Thane remembered from their academy days. The war wasn't what they told us, she continued, glancing nervously over her shoulder. The Zentorians didn't attack our colonies. We attacked theirs. The High Command fabricated the entire conflict to justify territorial expansion into Andromeda. I have the proof, communications logs, falsified reports, everything. Thane's world tilted. The Andromeda War had defined his generation, claimed millions of lives, and launched humanity into its current golden age of galactic expansion. If Elara was right, then everything was built on genocide and lies. I tried to expose them through proper channels, but Admiral Karath threatened to court-martial me for treason. When I persisted, they branded me a traitor and sent kill squads after me. Her voice cracked. Thane, I never betrayed humanity. I tried to save us from becoming monsters. Explosions echoed in the background of her transmission. She stumbled, regaining her footing as the ship shuddered violently. They've found me. My ship's disabled, but I've loaded all the evidence into this transmission. If something happens to me, you have to make this public. You have to stop them before. The transmission cut to static, leaving Thane staring at empty space where his wife's face had been. His hands clenched into fists as 20 years of carefully buried rage erupted to the surface. Thane spent the next 6 hours reviewing the data packet Elara had transmitted. Each file drove the knife of truth deeper into his heart. Falsified intelligence reports showing Zentorian aggression that never happened. Communications between high command officers discussing how to eliminate the peacekeeping obstacles. Most damning of all, Admiral Karatha's personal logs detailing the systematic extermination of Zentorian diplomatic envoys who had come seeking peace. The evidence was irrefutable. Humanity had committed genocide, then rewritten history to make themselves the heroes. The prosperity Earth enjoyed, the new colonies in Andromeda, the technological advances reverse-engineered from Zentorian ruins, all of it built on the bones of an innocent civilization. Thane's hands shook as he accessed the final file, a classified military report dated 3 days after Elara's supposed suicide. Subject: Elimination of security breach Captain E. Voss. The document detailed how a strike team had tracked her damaged ship to an asteroid field and destroyed it with all hands aboard. No mention of suicide, no mention of treason, just cold, efficient murder. They killed her, he whispered to the empty room. They killed her and made me believe she was a traitor. His grief transformed into something harder, sharper. Elara had died trying to prevent a Holocaust, and he had spent 20 years mourning a lie. But now he had the truth, and with it, the power to vindicate her memory and expose the rot at humanity's core. The question was, what would he do with it? Thane's contemplation was interrupted by his apartment's security system activating. Someone was overriding his locks with military-grade authorization codes. He quickly encrypted Elara's files and hid the data chip behind a loose wall panel as his front door hissed open. Admiral Korath stepped inside, flanked by 2 security officers. The old man hadn't changed much in 20 years. Still tall and imposing, silver hair immaculately groomed. His uniform bearing the insignia of Supreme Fleet Commander. His pale blue eyes held the same cold calculation Thane remembered from their last meeting. "Commander Blackwood," Korath said smoothly, "I trust you're well. It's been too long since we've spoken." "Not long enough," Thane replied, fighting to keep his voice level. "To what do I owe this unexpected visit? Our deep space monitoring stations detected an unusual transmission to your personal terminal. Something from the old Andromeda sector." Korath's smile was predatory. "Surely you understand our security concerns about unauthorized communications from former war zones." Thane forced himself to shrug casually. "Probably just cosmic background radiation. The arrays sometimes pick up echoes from old battles. Nothing more than electronic ghosts, perhaps. But I'm sure you won't mind if we conduct a routine security sweep of your systems. For the sake of thoroughness." Korath gestured to his men, who began moving toward Thane's computer terminal. "Actually, I do mind," Thane said, stepping into their path. "This is my private residence. You'll need a warrant." Korath's expression hardened. "Be very careful, Commander. Your wife's unfortunate choices already cast a shadow over your family name. Don't make the same mistakes she did." The implicit threat hung in the air like a blade. Thane realized with crystal clarity that Korath knew exactly what transmission he'd received. Somehow, they'd been monitoring his communications all along, waiting for this moment, waiting for Elara's final message to finally arrive. "I think you should leave," Thane said quietly. "I'm afraid that's not possible." Korath nodded to his men. Detain him. Thane had spent 20 years behind a desk, but his combat training never fully faded. As the first security officer reached for him, Thane grabbed the man's wrist and used his momentum to flip him over the coffee table. The second officer drew his weapon, but Thane was already moving, tackling him before he could fire. Korath backed toward the door, speaking into his wrist communicator. "Lock down the building. The package is attempting to leave." Thane stripped the unconscious officers of their weapons and access cards, then headed for his apartment's emergency exit. The building's security systems were already sealing main corridors, but he knew the maintenance tunnels from his military engineering background. If he could reach the underground transport hub, he might escape before they cordon off the entire district. As he crawled through narrow service conduits, Thane's mind raced. Korath's reaction confirmed everything. The Admiral knew about Elara's evidence, knew it could destroy him and the entire military hierarchy. They'd killed her to protect their secret, and now they'd kill him too. But Elara had spent her final moments ensuring the truth would eventually surface. Thane wouldn't let her sacrifice be meaningless. The maintenance tunnels led to Sector 12's industrial district, where Thane emerged through a utility grate near the old shipyards. His military contacts had been compromised. Anyone with official channels would report his location to Korath within minutes. But 20 years of civilian life had given him different kinds of allies. He found refuge in the workshop of Brix Carballo, a gruff ship mechanic who'd served under Thane during the war's final campaigns. Brix took one look at his former commander's condition and ushered him inside without questions. "Let me guess," Brix said, sealing the workshop's blast doors. "You found something you weren't supposed to find, and now the brass wants you disappeared." "Something like that." Thane activated a signal jammer and pulled out the encrypted data chip. Bricks, what I'm about to show you could get us both killed. But it's also the most important thing you'll ever see. For the next hour, they reviewed Elara's evidence together. Bricks's weathered face grew increasingly pale as the scope of the deception became clear. He'd lost 3 sons in the Andromeda War, believing they died defending humanity against alien aggression. Those bastards, he whispered finally. My boys died for nothing. We were the invaders all along. Not for nothing, Thane corrected. They died because they believed in protecting innocent people. The fact that our leaders betrayed that ideal doesn't diminish their sacrifice. Bricks wiped his eyes roughly. What do you need? A way to get this information public without Karatha's people stopping me. The major news networks are all controlled by government interests. I need to reach someone independent. I know somebody. Journalist named Sage Reeves. She's been investigating military corruption for years, but never had solid proof. This might be exactly what she's been looking for. Sage Reeves operated out of a converted warehouse in the city's forgotten district, surrounded by outdated broadcasting equipment and walls covered in conspiracy theories that suddenly didn't seem so crazy. She was younger than Thane expected, perhaps 30, with short-cropped black hair and intense dark eyes that missed nothing. Commander Blackwood, she said, gesturing him to a chair across from her makeshift desk. Bricks says you have something that could change everything. I have to admit, I'm skeptical. 20 years of chasing shadows teaches you to doubt big promises. Thane handed her the data chip. 20 years ago, my wife died trying to expose a conspiracy that goes to the highest levels of military command. This contains her final transmission, proof that the Andromeda War was based on fabricated intelligence and that we committed genocide against a peaceful species. Sage's eyebrows rose, but she plugged the chip into her secure terminal without comment. As Elara's image appeared on screen, Sage's professional skepticism gradually transformed into horrified fascination. She paused the playback several times to examine specific documents, cross-referencing them against her own research files. Jesus, she breathed finally. This explains everything. The inconsistencies in official reports, the classified budget allocations, the way anyone who asked too many questions got reassigned to frontier posts. She looked up at Thane. Why now? Why are you coming forward after all these years? Because I just received this transmission yesterday. Light from Andromeda takes 20 years to reach Earth. Elara sent this message moments before they killed her, but it's taken 2 decades to find me. Sage leaned back in her chair, mind obviously racing. If I publish this, they'll come after both of us. Are you prepared for that? They're already coming after me. The only question is whether Elara's sacrifice will mean something. Working through the night, Sage and Thane prepared a comprehensive expose that would shake the foundations of human civilization. They uploaded backup copies to secure servers across multiple colonies, ensuring the truth couldn't be suppressed even if they were eliminated. Sage's underground network of journalists and activists stood ready to disseminate the information the moment her broadcast began. At dawn, they went live on every available channel, pirate frequencies, colonial networks, even hijacked military communications. Sage introduced the story while Thane provided context about Elara's background and the circumstances of her death. Then they played her transmission in its entirety, followed by the most damning evidence files. The response was immediate and explosive. Within hours, protests erupted on Earth and throughout the colonies. Military units began deserting their posts rather than serve under commanders they now knew were war criminals. Colonial governors declared independence from Earth's authority, refusing to be associated with the genocide. But Karath wasn't finished. Military police surrounded the warehouse as Sage finished her second broadcast update. Through the security cameras, Thane watched armored vehicles taking positions in the surrounding streets. This is Admiral Karath. The old man's voice crackled through their hijacked emergency channel. Mr. Blackwood, you and your accomplice are broadcasting terrorist propaganda designed to undermine human security. Surrender immediately, and you'll receive fair trials. Sage laughed bitterly. Fair trials, like the one Captain Voss received. Thane moved to the window, seeing tactical teams preparing to storm the building. We've done what we came to do. The truth is out there now, spreading too fast for them to contain. Then let's make sure our final broadcast counts. As military forces closed in, Sage activated her emergency broadcast protocols, sending out a live feed of their final moments. The irony wasn't lost on Thane. Just as Elara had transmitted her last message while under attack, now he found himself in the same position. "This is Commander Thane Blackwood," he said into the camera. "If you're watching this, then Admiral Karatha's forces are probably storming our position. 20 years ago, my wife, Captain Elara Voss, died trying to prevent a Holocaust. She was branded a traitor for refusing to participate in genocide. Now they want to silence me for revealing her true heroism." Explosions echoed outside as the tactical teams breached the warehouse's outer defenses. Sage kept the cameras rolling, documenting every moment of the military's assault on civilian journalists. "The evidence speaks for itself," Thane continued. "Humanity built its golden age on the bones of an innocent species. We became the monsters we claimed to be fighting against. But it's not too late to choose a different path." The warehouse's main doors exploded inward. Armored soldiers poured through the breach, weapons raised, shouting orders for surrender. Through his earpiece, Thane could hear similar scenes playing out across the colonies as Karatha's allies moved to suppress the revelation. But the information was already spreading beyond their control. Independent colonies were broadcasting their own copies of Elara's transmission. Opposition leaders who had spent years gathering evidence of military corruption were finally speaking openly. The dam had burst, and 20 years of carefully constructed lies were washing away in the flood. Sage grabbed his hand as the soldiers surrounded them. "Your wife would be proud," she whispered. "She's finally coming home," Thane replied, raising his hands in surrender. 20 years late, but she's finally coming home." 6 months later, Thane stood in the memorial garden on Luna Colony, where a new monument bore Elara's name alongside thousands of other victims of the Andromeda conspiracy. The trials had been swift once the evidence became public. Karath and his co-conspirators faced charges of genocide, treason, and murder. The old admiral had died in prison before sentencing. Whether from guilt or poison, no one could say. Humanity's government had collapsed and reformed, with new leadership committed to making reparations to Centaurian survivors discovered living in hidden enclaves throughout Andromeda. First contact protocols were being rewritten, and the military was undergoing complete restructuring under civilian oversight. Sage Reeves approached, carrying a small device that looked remarkably familiar, another deep space transmission receiver, this one aimed at distant Centaurian space. "The response finally came through," she said quietly, handing him the device. "The Centaurian survivors want to establish formal contact. They're sending an ambassador." Thane activated the transmission, watching as an alien face appeared on screen. Humanoid but distinctly different, with large golden eyes and delicate features marked by what were unmistakably tears. "People of Earth," the ambassador said in halting but clear human speech, "we have received your message of truth and sorrow. Captain Elara Voss's sacrifice has been honored among our people for 20 years. We knew she died trying to stop the killing. We have waited long for your species to remember honor." Thane closed his eyes, feeling a weight he'd carried for 2 decades finally lifting from his shoulders. Elara had been right. The truth did set them free, even if it took 20 years to arrive. "The stars are patient," the Centaurian continued. "Light travels slowly between worlds, but it always reaches its destination. We are ready to begin again, if you are willing to earn the peace your Captain Voss died defending." The end.